Hi there. My name is Deidre Kennedy, and I'm here from the Pacifica Historical Society to welcome you to our show, Footprints of Pacifica. We're here to study the lure and lore of our lovely Pacifica and to study the character and to meet characters here in our town. Today's focus is going to be on our guest, Ken Lee, and we're welcoming him. He's here with Bob Milne, and Bob Milne is entertaining us with his annual benefit concert for the Historical Society. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Deidre, thank you very much, and I take it I'm one of the characters.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I can live with that.
Okay. The reason I'm saying sir is because Captain Lee is here in the studio to discuss with us some of his amazing adventures and interesting things he's done in his long and distinguished naval career. He was a submarine officer.
Thank you. Well, I'll be happy to do that.
Great.
Let's try.
I'd like to ask you a little about your background, your schooling, something about pool halls, and also how did you come to be interested in submarines? Did you read Jules Verne?
There's several questions there, but I will answer them all. I did read Jules Verne, but at an age where I was probably too young to transfer that into a career desire.
Okay.
And then after that, how did I get interested in submarines was a multi-step process to figure out how do I get out of Indiana.
Aha.
Because I was born and raised in Fort Wayne, Indiana, lived in one house, one bedroom growing up till I was 22. And so all of my thoughts were, well, how am I going to go do something? And I was in the Navy ROTC program at Purdue. That was step one.
Yes.
And I was enjoying that very much. And one day, submarine captain came through with what today would be a PowerPoint show. Back then, 35 millimeter slides. He was a sharp fellow. The slides were fascinating, and I thought, I'd like to try that. I tried it, loved it, did it for 24 years.
My. Oh. We'd like to thank you for your service.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You know, our castle was used by the Coast Guard in World War II to search for submarines and enemy action off of the shore of San Mateo County. Were your maneuvers in the open Pacific, the Atlantic, or in the Mediterranean?
Well, I served 2 tours in the out of Pearl Harbor, so I did a lot of work in the Pacific, 2 tours in the Atlantic coast, operated in both the North Atlantic and the Mediterranean. So I didn't do the Indian Ocean much, but there wasn't a whole lot going on down there 30 years ago. There is now.
Yes, the Somali pirates are
Absolutely
terrorizing shipping traffic there. How close did you come to the other submarines when you were reconning? Was the ballpark figure, say, within a half a mile or less?
That's a good ballpark.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We have all seen the movie Red October.
Yes.
And those chase sequences are just riveting. And they're so intense, and that intensity that you reached on your recon missions, did it provide you the edge you needed to keep up the hunt?
Yes, I didn't have to do much to keep an edge. That was a nice thing. What we did was exciting from time to time, and so I didn't have to generate morale amongst the crew. They knew they were doing some good stuff, and so that was one worry I didn't have. Hunt for Red October, outstanding movie. Very well done. And particularly all of the communications within the U.S. submarine part of that movie, I can attest exactly as it was done on our ships. So that was a pretty realistic picture.
I understand the crews are volunteers.
Everyone's a volunteer. Yes, we've always made a point of that.
We work with volunteers too. That helps a lot.
Yes.
The enormity of your crew, of you and your crew's responsibility, and the terrible possible consequences, these were nuclear submarines, were things you lived with 24/7, 365. Did the training and well-defined procedures assist in coping with this?
That's interesting. We didn't think of it that way. We didn't think of the terrible possible consequences. That's probably, most people probably don't, even though their job may in fact have them.
Right.
So we just tried to concentrate on the things we were supposed to be doing and doing those well.
I'd like to show everyone a picture of your ship. And
That's
there's
it.
Ken Lee in his dress.
That was actually my 4th submarine, Deidre. Standard submarine career for an officer would consist of going aboard a submarine for 3 years and handling all the junior officer roles. Supply officer, communications officer, basic gopher officer for a while, but 3 years of that, and then a second submarine. In my case, I was the chief engineer on a missile submarine. Third submarine, you're number 2 in charge, the executive officer, we called it. And then my 4th submarine was the Gato, and I was the captain there. It's nice to see that picture again. I like it.
Yes. What incidents stands out in your mind as one you would like to remember for your grandchildren?
Wow. You know, it's funny. My children, of which I have 4, and my grandchildren, 11, they think of Grandpa was in the Navy, and it doesn't go much deeper than that, and I don't think it will. And I haven't thought about, other than the fact that I'm glad they know I was in the Navy, but particular incident, I really can't think of any. That'll be up to them, I guess.
Yes. I know, having known some Navy folks, that there are some crazy and silly things that happen on board now and then. One or two would you like to share with us?
Yes, one just came up this week. I was discussing my service with some other people, and they asked, I heard they tried to grow vegetables on the submarine so you could have fresh vegetables when we were gone for 2 months at a time. How did that work? I said I had never seen that tried, actually. But what we did do is we would load out as many fresh vegetables and eggs as we could.
Wow.
So they would last as long as possible, but we had very small refrigerators. So we used the torpedo tubes. We put a lot of our vegetables and eggs in 2 of the torpedo tubes and used them out of there, saved our refrigerator room for nice things like steaks and so forth.
How large were the torpedo tubes?
21 inches in diameter, 18 feet long. So they were pretty good sized refrigerators.
Yes.
But what happened was, somewhere between day 30 and day 40, you would open the refrigerator door, which is the torpedo tube. Ooh.
Ooh.
The odor would tell you it's been 1 day too long. You reshut the door.
Compost.
And you shoot the vegetables and eggs out to sea.
Chum.
So you know that you've had them as long as possible.
Right.
Now, in the North Atlantic, that could last really up 50 days pretty easily.
Wow.
In the Pacific, not so much.
Not so much. No, much warmer there and
Yes.
humid. My. Well, that's extraordinary.
The guys got to eat, right?
Yes. Especially the Navy. They have the best food in all the services.
And you know what? The submarines still to this day get a little extra per person per day for food. That started back in the 30s, I believe. And so we do have a little extra to spend on food. And
That's nice.
when we go on like a 2-month deployment, it's still traditional to have a steak and lobster night at least every other week.
Oh,
And,
lovely.
it's pretty much a morale booster.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I know once your tours of duty ended, that you went to civilian life and
Indeed,
began
I did.
business interests in the Soviet Union.
Well, my business interest was in underwater technologies, servicing the offshore oil industry, devices where you find things that have been dropped on the ocean floor, and devices to pick them up, or to go to ocean or to oil rigs and do work there. That was in 1988 when I left the Navy, entered the civilian business, doing those things. 88, 89, the Soviet Union came apart.
Yes, they did.
My boss said, Ken, we ought to do something business-wise over there. Would you like to do that for us? I would love to. I studied Russian language for 4 years at Purdue. 24 years in the Navy was strictly anti-Soviet focused. That was our entire focus.
Right.
So yeah, this was exciting.
So these fellows that were once your focus of protecting the United States, and now it's turned to partners in business.
We practiced how to make sure we could shoot them before they shot us. They were practicing the same thing. I think we did better.
Yes.
I'm quite certain of it.
Yes.
But when the Soviet Union did come apart and we reached a new level of international relations, we reached a new level of relations within the military. We were both extremely proud of what we did during, quote, the Cold War, and we're both equally happy that we can now talk to each other and have a good time.
Yes. I've often wondered, with your similar training and your similar equipment, these brothers under the sea might have a lot more in common too.
We did have a lot in common from the experience of sealing yourself in a tube and leaving home for months at a time. And that probably is pretty consistent across cultures as to the impacts. But I've been fortunate enough now to be on a couple of their submarines. I'd rather be on ours.
Indeed. How did you come to meet your Russian counterparts?
I was in Russia on business. I actually went there for a little bit of extra language study. On my own initiative, I paid for 3 months of immersion language. My lovely wife went with me, knowing nothing about Russian language. We lived with a Russian family in an apartment, and I said, I would like to meet my Soviet counterpart.
Yes.
Find a guy who was in charge of a submarine, same time I was. Maybe we could write parallel stories of how we ended up being across the periscope window from each other. I never found that exact captain, because I found out as I asked a couple of questions, it was not too easy to say, I'd like to meet Soviet submarine captains. That was still a little touchy. But I did manage to meet a couple of outstanding Soviet submarine captains, and they're still my good friends to this day.
I'd like to show their picture.
Please. This picture is from less than a year ago in St. Petersburg, Russia. I was visiting last year. The whole purpose of the trip was to go back and to say hi to my friends, whom I hadn't seen for almost 4 years. I have friends in St. Petersburg, Moscow, and Nizhny Novgorod. This is me on the left, the good-looking guy. The less good-looking guy, that's Viktor Ponokhorovsky. He was commanding officer of a Soviet nuclear ballistic missile submarine for 6 years. We only did it for 3 years at a time. He was in command for 6 years. The gentleman on the right looks like Robin Williams. He's as funny as Robin Williams, extremely smart. He was captain of a Soviet diesel submarine, diesel-powered. And the gentleman in the middle was the navigator on Soviet ballistic missile submarines.
Fascinating.
But very good friends, very good friends.
One thing I was struck by your story was the enormous impact and potentially tragic outcome of espionage in the United States that gave the Russians the stealth technology under the sea that was the domain of the U.S. Navy. I don't think we civilians realize just how much we lost with that. Do you think the internet and cyberspace pose an equal or greater risk?
Yes. That's interesting. You're asking a question about the espionage and its effect on reducing the technological gap between our submarine technologies and theirs. That really did happen. That was, we refer to it as the Johnny Walker affair. And that bad guy was actually a submariner at one point. But he managed to steal our crypto codes. He did it because he was responsible for destroying them. So he signed them off as destroyed, put them in his pocket, managed to do that enough times to where the Soviets, in fact, got an awful lot of technical knowledge out of his compromises. That occurred in the 80s. Prior to that time, yes, I had a strong acoustic advantage over my Soviet counterpart all the time. If I wanted to find him, I could. If I wanted to follow him without him knowing it, I could. And I would say it wasn't that hard. By 1988, it was a little harder.
Over with.
But we still did it.
Yeah. So now on a lighter note, you're able to sit back and share Navy stories with your Russian counterparts.
Absolutely.
And come to an understanding that they were experiencing similar tasks assigned to you and your crew. Were there more differences or things shared as brothers under the sea?
Yes, as we talked about before, it was mostly things shared, not a lot of differences. But then again, and I was talking just about Bob Milne, my piano playing friend here, he talks to people from all countries. And in Russia, it turned out that I would often speak my halting Russian, and my counterparts would be speaking their halting English, and that's the way we communicated. And we didn't figure that out, or we didn't plan to do it that way. It's the way the conversations resolved. And then I realized, yeah, we're both keeping it simple that way. I don't know a lot of sophisticated Russian words, so I'm speaking simply. They're speaking simply in English. So we exchange simple stories. I must say there's probably a lot of second and third layer meanings that we never talked about.
I'd like to show some pictures of the Red October Club in St. Petersburg.
Yeah, this is called the St. Petersburg Sailors and Submariners Club, and they're very active in the international submarine community. There's an international submariners reunion around the world every other year. Last year in Turkey, the next time it's going to be in Israel, I think. It was in the Soviet Union about 6 years ago, and these people are very active in that. These are ex-submariners keeping the submarine culture alive. So I visited that club last year when I was there.
And point out, is that the piano you played?
That's the piano I found in the club and played. They have a nice bar in the Submariners Club, of course. I'd be disappointed if they didn't. Right. And so this gentleman in this picture, he's the director of the Submariners Club. He was showing me around, and I saw next to the bar this black enameled piano, gold leaf lettering on the front, just like ours would say Yamaha. This one said Krasny Oktyabr, Red October, Leningrad.
Yes.
So that means it was made by the Red October Piano Factory in Leningrad.
My goodness.
And so I sat down and played a couple of tunes. Quite an experience for me. That was felt here.
Since retirement, you've taken up the piano, and
I have.
And what are some of the kinds of music you play?
I play simple music badly.
Okay.
Now I actually the only thing I have going for me in pursuing learning to play the piano is passion. I really want to be able to play. So therefore I can brute force simple tunes. I love gospel music. There are standard hymns, Rock of Ages.
Oh yes,
Old
Amazing
Rugged
Grace.
Cross, Amazing Grace. I love those. But that's about where I top out.
I've got a home in glory land that outshines the sun. I love that one too.
It. That was a little too fast for me, though.
Okay. So the chances of a book or a series of short stories coming up in the future, what do you think?
I hope there will be. I have in fact I've written a list of things I would like to write about. And I've written about half of them.
Great.
And but right now I know my kids have no great interest in that, and I understand that. And I'm just thinking someday they will, so I hope to have this all written.
Good.
And in these days of self-publishing, I would probably self-publish it in this book.
It's important. Ken, I want to really emphasize that you've lived your life, and most of us haven't lived a life like that. And the privilege of sharing time with a true, humble, respected American hero would inspire a larger audience, especially the younger ones.
You're too kind. Thank you.
So we have a couple other things I've skipped over. I want to make sure we counter everything.
We haven't mentioned pool playing.
I haven't.
Which I would like to do because,
Please.
As you know, I'm here as a friend of Bob Milne, truly one of our country's best pianists. In his case, he's Mr. Ragtime, United States. I can't hold a candle to him. I don't touch the keys whenever I'm in his presence. However, he's also an avid pool player and a very, very good one. And sometimes, maybe 1 in 10, I can actually beat him.
Oh, that's
so
great.
I started playing pool when I was a youngster. I actually worked in a pool hall for 1.5 years just before going to college. And I love playing pool. Bob does, and we play a lot of that together as a mode of his relaxation.
Yes.
And my one chance to do something almost on the same level as Bob.
That's great. So we have other things I'm interested in your past.
Ask away, officer. I have nothing to hide.
Okay. When you were in the Mediterranean Sea, was that as deep as you were in the oceans, or is it shallower there?
It is shallower there, but it's deep. For example, we spent a lot of time in water over 3,000 feet deep. That's pretty deep.
Yes.
But if you just cross into the central Atlantic, you're crossing 18, 19, 20,000 feet water depth. Just north of Puerto Rico, there's a Puerto Rican trench, nearly 30,000 feet.
Wow.
In the Pacific, behind Guam, where we operate submarines, we have a forward operating base for our submarines. Behind Guam is the Marianas Trench. That's like 36,000 feet deep, so it gets pretty deep.
That's deeper than Mount Everest is high.
It is. It is by about a mile.
Thank you. So, that's about everything here. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I'd just like to add thank you for this opportunity to talk about what I did for so many years, and I'm enjoying the heck out of being in Pacifica for the first time in my life, meeting great people at every turn.
Well, thank you. I hope you come again.
I shall.
Yes. When you're visiting Russia, do you have a trip planned soon?
Probably 2 years from now.
2 years.
All of my friends, we're all getting up there. We're all hitting the big 7-0 here pretty soon, and so I thought, well, I better get over there about that time because
Right.
it's a little tougher to spend 2 weeks in Russia than it is 2 weeks here. It's once you leave the big city, it's still not easy living.
That's true.
So I don't know how many years I'll be able to
That's
do
true.
that.
Have they come to the United States to visit?
They did when we were doing business together, and I could sponsor their trips business-wise.
Right.
But now they can't afford the trip here, so I make it in the other direction.
I remember from the Red October movie that there was a scene at the end when the submarine was entering a river area. What's that about?
Yes, the saga of the Red October was Sean Connery, the captain, was turning it over to the United States, defecting, so to speak. And so they sailed the Red October up into Penobscot Bay and into the Penobscot River to hide it from the Soviet satellites, so they wouldn't find it.
That's right.
Well, it could never fit into the Penobscot River.
A real Russian submarine.
No.
No.
However, it could go partway up the bay.
Okay.
And when I first retired in about year 2000, my wife and I started going to Maine. Ended up owning a home where we sat on our deck. Right there was the entrance buoy to the Penobscot River.
What an amazing coincidence.
What a coincidence. And it really was a coincidence. I had no plans to connect the two at all.
That's amazing. Now, what's the draft on a submarine roughly?
Roughly 30 feet.
Ooh.
Yes, so you have to you have to be careful.
Yes. Oh, indeed.
Easy to run aground close to shore.
And that, I believe, happened to a Japanese submarine off of the coast of California during World War II?
Yes, and it's happened to quite a few submarines over the years.
Unfortunately, yes.
It's really a three-dimensional problem where often boating is more of a two-dimensional problem. With submarines, it's definitely three.
In your submarine days, did you encounter any large marine animals or mammals?
Large and small. I think we all have seen whales or heard whales on television. People say, "Wow, those are the whales." Well, it really happens that way, and we do hear it. And it's not too bothersome. But then you get into areas where there are huge schools of, say, shrimp.
Shrimp? Shrimp are little.
I know, and they can sound like crinkling paper or popcorn to where you say,
They do?
Get me out
In
of
your
here."
headphones?
Yes,
And they sound like Rice Krispies?
exactly, Rice Krispies.
Those little teeny...
Then there are others that are called carpenter fish, we call them, because it sounds like people are out there going, whoomp, whoompa, whoompa, bam, bam, bam.
And a fish makes that kind of noise.
Yes.
Do you hear dolphins?
Yes. Yep. Dolphins are our friends, always our friends.
That's true. Did you ever encounter a giant squid, like Captain Nemo?
I did not, but they do exist. Oh, they really do.
Do.
Yes.
Sometimes we see the carcasses run up on shore. My. We had a blue whale, unfortunately, and their calf come up on the coast recently. That was very sad. Now the blue whales have returned to Monterey Bay, and there were sightings of about 100 of them, blue whales and humpback whales, recently.
When a submarine submerges, if it still has its periscope up, usually the submarine will submerge, and then there's maybe 2 feet of periscope left above the water, and out the optics we can see. Well, if you just continue for the submarine to descend, but leave the periscope up, you can still see out into the water through the periscope window.
Wow. Like a very expensive glass-bottom boat.
Exactly. Very small glass. And actually, in high power, it's only an 8-degree window.
Interesting.
But every now and then, like in a large school of dolphins, I never had the opportunity to do it with whales, but we would go down to where we could still see underwater and let the crew cycle through and look through the periscope and see the dolphins swimming just under the water. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Very interesting.
Now, since it's a Navy submarine and it's sort of official business and you have things to do,
Yes,
there's
ma'am.
not any fishing allowed.
No, never.
Never, never, never.
We actually did troll a couple of times, and it's fun. One of our large test ranges is in the Bahamas, Andros, right off
yes.
of Andros Island.
I know
in the-
Andros
in
Island
the
very
tongue of the
well,
ocean,
yes.
very deep.
And clear.
Outstanding sport fishing area.
Beautiful.
Well, the civilian test people couldn't work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
No.
So when they had to finally knock off, and we're still stuck out at sea, we might surface and do a little fishing.
Great. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
And it's nutritious.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We also did swim calls. You asked about the depth of the water.
Yes.
One time coming through the Puerto Rican Trench, I stopped the Gato to hold swim call because I told the guys, you'll never be swimming in a deeper swimming pool than this. The water was, I think, 20,000 feet deep.
Wow.
And that was a lot of fun.
And they wear their life vests.
No.
No, because they're sailors and they know how to swim.
We have trained divers on board that
Okay.
are basically like rescue swimmers. So we had our rescue swimmers stationed topside. We had another 2 people on the bridge with rifles in case sharks came around.
Oh my, that is
What-
exciting.
Yes, if sharks would come, these guys were supposed to yell shark and we get out of the water, but in case somebody couldn't get out fast enough, we had some means there to do that. So we took our precautions, but took a nice dip.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that.
Absolutely.
Because, like my dad always said, you have to play as hard as you work.
I'm a believer in that. I
That's
like
great.
your dad.
Yes. So, really like to thank you, Ken. You've just been regaled us with amazing tales, and it's an appreciation that often we don't have a chance to have here. And a special guest coming to Pacifica with your background is a treat for all of us.
Well, I didn't know what to expect in this environment, but I've enjoyed it very much, Deidre.
you.
Thank you.
And that's about all we have time for today. We want to thank Captain Lee again for joining us. And if you'd like to get involved with the Pacifica Historical Society, you can reach us at Box 752, Pacifica, California, 94044, or pacificahistory.org. Our telephone number is 650-359-5462. Thank you for watching our show. And I'd like to paraphrase Longfellow as we send everyone on their way. The lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints in the sands of time.